From werewolves to vampires, modern pop culture is littered with tales of supernatural beings of all kinds. While shows such as Teen Wolf and movies such as Twilight and The Howling have presented their own version of werewolves, these creatures have truly become one of the most popular supernatural entities to appear on screen. Of course, every one of these movies has taken a different route while depicting their traits and appearances, and modern pop culture is overflowing with all these representations. Today, we come to you with a curation of the top 15 most fascinating modern-day werewolf movies that you must certainly check out if you're a fan of lycanthropy or if you even just enjoy supernatural media. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Ginger Snaps, 2000. Set in a high school setting, Ginger Snaps was a 2000 Canadian supernatural horror movie that was directed by John Fawcett and written by Karen Walton. The story revolves around two teenage sisters named Bridget and Ginger Fitzgerald, whose lives take a turn when Ginger ends up getting bitten by a strange animal. These events take place around the time of her first period, and she goes through a period of great uncertainty as she understands her bodily changes, especially during her first transformation at full moon. She slowly ends up turning into a lycanthropy and evolves into a bold young woman who acts in animalistic ways. On the other hand, a shy Bridget does her best to find cures for her sister's condition before she does any irreversible damage to their community. The movie truly keeps us on the edge of our seats as the two sisters step into uncharted territories and eventually face each other in an intense climax scene where Ginger ends up dying in her sister's arms. Ginger Snaps was a wonderful blend of horror and comedy, and it was one of the first portrayals of werewolves in a modern suburban society. The movie also launched Katharine Isabelle's career as a supernatural movie star, as she went ahead to play several werewolf roles after the success of this one. The movie also tells two parallel, irrelated tales as Ginger not only navigates her transformation into a lycanthropy, but also tries to get acquainted with the changes that come with puberty. Dog Soldiers, 2002. Directed by Neil Marshall, this 2002 British horror film takes us for a wild ride in North Wales, where werewolves lurk in the shadows and feast on any unsuspecting passerby. The movie kicks off with a young couple being attacked, but soon takes a different route and introduces us to a bunch of British Army soldiers. These soldiers end up in the forests of North Wales and set up camp, only to be cornered by werewolves in the middle of the night. After many of the soldiers are attacked and devoured by these wolves, the soldiers realize that a family of wolves is living in a house nearby, and the plot unravels as they try to get rid of this menace. However, things do not seem to be as easy as they had imagined, and more members of the squadron end up losing their lives. Dog Soldiers manages to create quite a tense, grisly environment where the audience is left wondering whether even a single soldier will survive until the very end. The movie has some wonderful visuals of werewolves in their natural territory as the sly lie devour one victim after the other. Even though it was shot on a low budget, Dog Soldiers provides a whole lot of action and adventure and is certainly one of the most entertaining werewolf movies on this list. Underworld, 2003. Underworld is a 2003 action horror film that revolves around several supernatural elements, ranging from vampires to werewolves to special masters who can control them. More than focusing on just these creatures, the movie takes us on a journey through their history and talks about a subtype of werewolves known as Lycans in great detail. Underworld was just the first of many movies in this series, and its plot revolved around a vampire death dealer named Celine, who was mainly known for hunting down Lycans as a form of revenge. She believed that she had lost her entire family in a werewolf attack, and most of the movie revolved around her attempts to hunt and slaughter them. As the movie progressed, Celine developed quite an attachment with a medical intern named Michael Corvin, who had recently been the target of several Lycan attacks. Celine tried her best to protect him from the Lycans and even face Master Lucien, who had somehow managed to infect Michael. In a surprising twist of events, Celine eventually finds herself at a crossroads towards the movie's climax. On one hand, she is bound by her duty to kill any Lycans, including Michael, but on the other hand, her heart tells her to risk her life to save him. The Wolfman, 2010. Inspired by the 1941 film of the same name, The Wolfman was a 2010 American Gothic horror movie that starred Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins, and Emily Blunt in the lead roles. Filled with a stellar cast, this movie follows the life of an actor based in America who eventually returns to his hometown in England in the wake of his brother's murder. When Lawrence Talbot returns home, he hears several rumors about his brother's death that suggest that he was either killed by the werewolf or by the Romani. As the story progresses, Lawrence decides to visit the Romani on a full moon night, and in the meantime, a werewolf ends up attacking the town. In an unfortunate series of events, Lawrence ends up facing the werewolf and suffers a bite, which triggers his transformation into a werewolf as well. He lives through several anguish-filled nights as he suffers from feverish dreams, but eventually returns stronger than ever. Unfortunately, he is soon arrested by the police and then subjected to several cruel treatments to cure his condition until he eventually goes rogue and kills his doctor. Eventually, Lawrence does track down the werewolf that killed his brother, among others, and the movie ends with justice being served as Lawrence manages to kill him and avenge his brother's death. As far as supernatural movies go, The Wolfman is a classic tale of revenge in action as Lawrence embarks on a journey of a lifetime. The film was also praised for its special effects and acting performances, and it is truly a must-watch in the lycanthropy genre. Werewolves Within 2021. Adapted from the Red Storm Entertainment video game of the same name, Werewolves Within was a 2021 mystery horror film with a dash of comedy. It follows the lives of a group of people in Beaverfield as they slowly realize that one of them is a werewolf in disguise. The movie has quite an interesting premise as we are introduced to the residents of this small town, and we soon learn all about their quirks and traits until one of their dogs is killed under mysterious circumstances. Soon enough, they find the body of one of the residents' missing husbands, and another man named Pete suffers from a mysterious animal bite. As things get tense, an environmentalist named Dr. Jane Ellis steps up to look into the incidents before concluding that the murderer is a werewolf. All the residents soon take up accommodation in Janine Sherman's lodge while they try to track down the werewolf, but eventually they blame and attack each other. Werewolves Within manages to show the ugly side of human emotions as one tries to fight for their survival, and it is certainly one of the most thrilling movies on the list. The plot thickens with each scene, and we find ourselves on the edge of our seats as we try to guess the killer until the end. Even though this movie is a mystery thriller, it does have some wonderful moments of comedy that set a lighthearted tone, and the over-the-top characters are just the cherry on top. Late Phases 2014. Released in 2014, Late Phases kicks off with a scene where a young man named Will moves his blind war veteran father, Ambrose McKinley, into an old age home. The old man checks into the community with his dog and soon senses something strange in this setting that was located on the edge of a forest. Soon enough, he meets some other residents such as Gloria, Anna, Emma, and Dolores, but he does not have much time to get acquainted with them as a werewolf kills Dolores the same night. Unaware of the fact that this community was plagued by a werewolf problem, Ambrose and his dog stick together until a werewolf attacks them and the dog loses its life while defending its owner. As the movie progresses, Ambrose starts digging a grave for his dog and eventually finds himself facing these werewolves on his own. This might sound like a death sentence, but Ambrose does not shy away from this challenge and uses his military expertise to kill several werewolves by using booby traps. Eventually he exhausts himself and ends up as the target of one of these wolves who bites him and leaves him infected. In a striking finale, he refuses to turn into the same kind of monster that killed his dog, and he eventually takes his own life by overdosing on his medication before his transformation. As the name suggests, Late Phases truly sheds light on the last few phases of Ambrose's life, ranging from his time at the retirement community to his brave attempts at fighting off the werewolves. This movie is a lot more emotional than most films on this list, but it has a compelling plot, and it does justice to the themes of lycanthropy.
No, I'm nothing like you. You're a murderer.
You're a killer too, aren't you?
Red Riding Hood 2011. With a star-studded cast including Amanda Seyfried, Gary Oldman, Billy Burke, and Virginia Madsen, Red Riding Hood was a 2011 American dark fantasy film produced by none other than Leonardo DiCaprio. The movie was loosely based on the folktale of Red Riding Hood, and it followed the life of a young girl named Valerie who lived near a forest with her family. This forest was known as the habitat of one fearsome werewolf who had seemingly struck a truce with the village folk to stay away from them. As the story progresses, Valerie learns that the werewolf has broken its truce by murdering her older sister, and all hell breaks loose as they summon a witch hunter named Father Solomon to get rid of the wolf. They eventually decide to venture into the forests and find the wolf's lair, but it turns out to be tedious as the wolf attacks anyone who tries to get too close to its home. In a playful twist to the original story, Valerie ends up coming across the wolf as it threatens to kill more people if she does not go with it, and the young girl soon starts believing that the wolf is actually her grandmother. However, it is eventually revealed that the wolf was none other than Valerie's father, and that the firstborns in their family were cursed to turn into werewolves. Among other things, Red Riding Hood takes us on a wild ride as Valerie's lover eventually faces her father and turns into a werewolf. As time passes, she settles into her grandmother's old house in the forest with him and leaves her old life behind. As far as remakes go, this film does a remarkable job of adding a supernatural element to an old folktale, and werewolves truly make for a wonderful upgrade to the story's traditional wolves. Bloodthirsty, 2021. Directed by Amelia Moses, this 2021 Canadian horror film followed the life of Gray Kessler, a singer-songwriter who suffers from anxiety. Gray often relies on medication to keep her anxious thoughts under control, and she especially has a hard time with her nightmares where she turns into a wolf. As her condition worsens, a music producer named Vaughn Daniels invites her to stay at his remote wilderness recording studio and work on her second album, and she soon accepts his offer. They soon settle down and start working together, and things take a turn for the worse as Vaughn pushes her to dig deeper into her darkest impulses and trigger her transformation into a bloodthirsty werewolf. As the movie progresses, we learn that Vaughn is actually her father and that he is also a werewolf, and all hell breaks loose as she eventually kills him before leaving his studio. While all of this sounds pretty intense in itself, the movie ends on an ambiguous note as Gray's doctor suggests that she was only hallucinating these things. At the same time, the singer seems to recollect every single thing from killing her father to leaving his mansion. Bloodthirsty makes for an exciting entry in this list of films inspired by lycanthropy, and it perfectly manages to capture the gore and the nightmarish darkness that comes with the transformation into a werewolf. My Animal, 2023. Premiering at the Sundance Film Festival, My Animal was a 2023 werewolf film that was directed by Jacqueline Castel. The movie follows the life of a young girl named Heather who finds herself to be a social outcast until she meets and falls for a figure skater named Johnny. They end up forming quite an intimate bond, and Heather soon finds herself in a whirlwind of emotions and intense desires as she tries to navigate their relationship. Moreover, she seems to be harboring a secret of her own, and her alcoholic mother often imprisons her in their home, especially around the full moon. Heather's wolf-like tendencies make it even harder for her to blend in with the teenage crowd in her small town, and Johnny makes things better for her by exposing her to a whole new world. In fact, he eventually even agrees to live as a social outcast on the outskirts of town to accommodate her werewolf condition. In this list of full thrillers, My Animal is quite a sweet and drama-filled tale of a werewolf as she tries to find romance and comes to terms with her identity.
Trying to help out where I could.
Wolves, 2014. Directed by David Hayter, Wolves was a 2014 Canadian action horror film that followed the life of a college student named Caden. The movie starts with Caden on the football field as he displays superhuman strength while retaliating against a rival player's attack. Confused and shocked by his own displays of strength, Caden distracted himself and soon met with his girlfriend Lisa, but this did not do him any good. In fact, he got a little too worked up while making out with her, and this triggered his transformation into a werewolf. What followed was a whole lot of chaos as he regained consciousness around his parents' dead bodies and then ran away from home and desperately tried to get his lycanthropy under control. He soon finds some comfort in the company of Wild Joe, another werewolf who helps him understand his origins and get his powers under control. Wolves may start out in a high school setting, but it takes us for a wild ride as Caden faces several obstacles of all kinds and tries to emerge from them without doing any harm. Ranging from his attempts to form a regular relationship to fighting against werewolves who are out to get him, this movie offers a whole lot of good old-fashioned adventure with a touch of lycanthropy. Howl, 2015. Directed by Paul Hyatt, this 2015 British horror movie opened with an Alpha Trax train guard named Joe Griffin while he was on an overnight shift. As the journey progresses, they pass through the countryside when the train comes to a screeching halt in the middle of a forest. While the train seems to have hit something on the tracks, the passengers find themselves stranded and things take a turn for the worse when a werewolf smashes through the cabin windows and starts attaching the passengers. As more and more passengers get infected and turned into werewolves themselves, the movie focuses on the crew's desperate attempts to get the train moving while the howls attract the attention of an entire pack of werewolves deep within the forest. Taking place in a fast-paced atmosphere, Howl takes us on a wild journey as we second-handedly experience the terror faced by passengers. The film does a wonderful job of creating a tense atmosphere where every second passenger is the target of an attack, and it lived up to its title in many ways. It explores themes of survival and fear in the most dire situations and turns a peaceful journey into a bloodfest in the blink of an eye. Werewolf, The Beast Among Us, 2012. Following the lives of a bunch of werewolf bounty hunters led by Charles, Werewolf, The Beast Among Us was a 2012 fantasy horror film set in the 19th century Europe. The story focuses on a bunch of mysterious killings across a village, which eventually prompts these bounty hunters to track down the werewolf and kill it. While they lay several traps to lure the animal, this werewolf manages to avoid them all, and they soon realize that they are up against an intelligent creature and not some mindless animal. Moreover, the local Romani leader tells them that this werewolf might soon be able to transform at will, and things take a turn for the worse, as Charles realizes that their target might be one of them in disguise. The movie's title perfectly hints at the idea that the werewolf might just be lurking among them, and it plays out perfectly as Charles eventually faces this werewolf in his human form by the end of the film. The film manages to keep the audience invested until the very end, as this pack of bounty hunters learn to confront their own fears and deal with betrayals and shocking reveals as the movie ends on a climactic note. Trim Season, 2023. Directed by Ariel Vida, Trim Season was a recent release in the horror thriller genre, and it came out in July 2023. The plot follows a bunch of people as they decide to travel to a remote marijuana farm hoping to earn some petty cash. They're quite hopeful about their plans. These plans go right out the window as soon as they reach the place and realize that something is quite unsettling. While they start working on the farm, one of these characters named Mona gains some magical powers due to the marijuana strains, and all hell breaks loose. As the movie progresses, they face a werewolf threat and realize they need to escape the mountain as soon as possible. This movie presents itself as the perfect watch for horror movie nights. It has some goofy moments, especially towards the ending, that might leave one in awe of what they just witnessed. Nevertheless, the plot certainly shows a lot of promise, and while this might not be one of the most critically acclaimed movies on the list, it is definitely fun to watch. Cursed, 2005. Starring Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg in lead roles as orphan siblings, Cursed was a 2005 horror comedy film that garnered quite a lot of attention. The movie follows Jimmy and Ellie Myers as they end up crashing into another car as well as an animal while driving back home together. While this animal attacks them, they fail to get a good look at it, and Jimmy describes it as a wolf or dog-type creature. Slowly but surely, Ellie and Jimmy start experiencing strange symptoms associated with a wolf bite, and Ellie even finds herself attracted to a co-worker's blood. While Jimmy tries to convince her that they were bitten by a werewolf, Ellie has her own views on the matter, and she even dismisses him by touching some silver and claiming that it did nothing to her. However, their symptoms eventually become increasingly evident, and the movie follows their adventures as they try to get a hold of their powers and break this curse. Cursed is considered to be a cult classic among other werewolf movies, and it certainly manages to catch our eyes despite some cheesy special effects. It presents an interesting take on werewolves in the modern day, and it adds a lot of fun to the otherwise blood-filled lycanthropy genre. Hair of the Beast, 2010. Set in Quebec in 1665, The Hair of the Beast follows the life of a thief named Joseph Cote, who somehow manages to run away moments before being hanged for his crimes. While he seeks shelter in a local village, a werewolf ends up biting him, and the villagers tend to his wounds and help him recover. They also tell him about this werewolf that lurks in the village and shows him the journals of Father Brindamore, a legendary werewolf slayer. As the plot progresses, they decide to isolate Joseph before he turns into a werewolf and attacks them, but he eventually manages to escape once again. He then rushes to reunite with his lover Sophie, but he soon finds himself in a whole lot of trouble as the villagers chase him with the intention of burning him down, while the guards from Quebec try to find him and finally hang him. The Hair of the Beast is a wild roller coaster in the form of a movie, and it manages to keep the audiences engaged until the very end. The movie also garnered a lot of praise for its beautiful filmography, despite its supernatural themes, and it is certainly one of the best made werewolf movies on this list. Marvelous verdict. Ginger Snaps to trim season, every single one of these movies offers a fresh take on werewolves and teaches us something new about these creatures of the night. While some of these movies are more popular than others, they all scratch our itch for supernatural media that does justice to werewolves. We hope you enjoyed this curated list, and do tell us your favorite picks in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!